The rain hammered against the cheap motel window in Harmony Gulch, creating a hypnotic rhythm Clara recognized as the same sound that had kept her awake for 5 years. Each drop was a countdown, each second an echo of the last day she saw her father and sister vanish into the Australian outback. Her hands trembled as she held the lukewarm coffee, her fingers marked by the compulsively bitten nails she developed whenever she thought of them. The phone rang, slicing through the silence like a knife. Clara hesitated before answering, knowing that only bad news arrived after 10 o'clock in this God-forsaken place. Clara Morrison? The voice on the other end was rough, laced with a Texan twang and something more, an urgency that made her stomach clench. Yes, this is Jack Thornton, a bounty hunter. I found something that might interest you, something about your father and sister. The words fell like stones into still water, creating ripples that spread through her entire body. Clara closed her eyes, smelling the familiar scent of damp earth and metal that always transported her back to that terrible day. What did you find? Her voice was a whisper. A camcorder, buried 10 feet deep, near the entrance to the Carlsbad Caverns. It's damaged, but parts of the memory card still work. Clara dropped her cup. The clatter of porcelain shattering on the floor brought her back to the present, but her mind was already racing, going back 5 years, to when she was only 20 and believed the world still made sense. David Morrison, her father, was a geologist, a cave expert, obsessed with rare rock formations and unexplored mineral deposits. Emma, her 16-year-old younger sister, followed him like a shadow, fascinated by the stories he told about subterranean worlds and lost civilizations. Clara, the eldest daughter, had always been the skeptic, the one who preferred the safety of the surface. But in March 2019, when David received an anonymous map marking a secret entrance to the Carlsbad Caverns, Clara should have insisted more that they shouldn't go. She should have noticed the strange glint in her father's eyes, the way he talked about revolutionary discoveries and secrets buried for millennia. "Where are you?" Clara asked into the phone, already reaching for the keys to her rental car. "At Murphy's Bar on Main Street." "But listen, girl, what's on that camcorder? I don't know if you want to see it." Clara had already hung up. The road to Harmony Gulch was a labyrinth of dust and darkness, dotted with the occasional lights of subterranean homes carved into the rock. Clara drove on autopilot, her hands gripping the steering wheel as memories spilled out like water from a broken dam. She remembered their last breakfast together. David was agitated, showing photographs of unusual rock formations, talking about a community that had contacted him through coded letters. Emma hung on his every word, her eyes shining with the same thirst for adventure that had led so many Morrisons to ruin. "Clara, you don't understand," David had said, gripping her hand with a force that left marks. "This will change everything. The way we see history, geology, humanity itself." Clara should have recognized the signs. Her father had always been eccentric, but there was something different about those last few months. The letters arrived regularly, unmarked envelopes with strange symbols on the back. David kept them locked in a drawer, but Clara once saw fragments of a page, words like preparation, chosen, and descent. Murphy's Bar was exactly the kind of place where secrets were traded for shots of whiskey. Clara pushed open the heavy door, smelling the scent of stale cigarettes and male sweat mixed with the sickly sweet aroma of spilled beer. Jack Thornton wasn't hard to spot, a man in his late 50s, his face weathered by the desert sun, calloused hands clutching a brown envelope as if it were a bomb about to explode. "You're younger than I expected," he said when Clara sat down opposite him, "and you look exactly as I imagined." Clara studied his face, searching for signs of lies or deception. "Show me." Jack hesitated, his fingers drumming on the table. "Before I do that, I need you to understand. I wasn't looking for your father and sister. I was tracking something else, something that disappeared from this region at the same time as them." "What?" "A group. They called themselves the Depths, a kind of cult that believed the truth about humanity was buried in the world's oldest caves. They had a base here in Carlsbad, but vanished overnight." Clara felt the air leave her lungs. You're saying my father and sister were involved with a cult. I'm saying I found evidence that they may have been invited. Jack slid the envelope across the table. Look for yourself. Inside the envelope were photographs of the camcorder, a professional camera Clara immediately recognized as her father's, and printouts of some recovered images from the memory card. The first photos showed David and Emma at a cave entrance, smiling at the camera. They looked excited, as they always did at the start of a new exploration. But as Clara flipped through the images, the smile faded from her face. The subsequent photographs showed the cave's interior, but these weren't normal rock formations. The walls were covered in carved symbols, drawings that seemed to depict human figures descending towards something, and in the center of an underground chamber was a stone table, surrounded by extinguished candles. The last photograph showed Emma, but she was no longer smiling. Her eyes were glazed over, as if she were in a trance, and in her hands she held an ancient scroll. Behind her, in the shadows, Clara could make out other figures, people wearing dark robes. Jesus Christ, Clara whispered. There's more, Jack said, his voice low. I managed to recover a few seconds of video. Are you sure you want to see this? Clara nodded, though every fiber of her being screamed at her to run from that place and never look back. Jack placed an old tablet on the table and hit play. The screen shook, showing the unsteady perspective of someone holding the camera, probably David. The audio was distorted, but Clara could hear voices chanting in a language she didn't recognize. The camera moved through stone corridors, following torchlights that danced on the walls. Suddenly, the image stopped in a larger chamber. Emma was in the center, surrounded by at least 20 robed figures. She no longer looked like the adventurous teenager Clara knew. Her movements were stiff, almost robotic, as if she were being controlled. Emma, David's voice echoed through the video, laced with despair. The camera shook violently. Emma, what have they done to you? One of the hooded figures turned towards the camera. Though the face was in shadow, Clara could see the eyes that gleamed with a light that wasn't human. You came willingly, David Morrison. The voice was female, but it had an odd quality, as if it were coming from a great distance. As promised in the letters, your daughter has already accepted the truth. Now it is your turn to choose. The video cut abruptly. Clara was trembling. Her hands gripped the edge of the table so tightly that her knuckles turned white. Where did you find this? 3 feet underground, like I said. But here's the weird part. The earth above was undisturbed, like someone buried the camera from below, without disturbing the surface. Jack leaned forward. Clara, I've seen a lot in my life. I've hunted criminals, cultists, people who vanished into the outback. But this is different. Whatever happened in that cave, it wasn't natural. Clara closed her eyes, trying to process the information. It all confirmed her worst fears, but it also raised new questions. If David and Emma were dead, who had buried the camera, and why only 5 years later? I need to go there, she said finally. No. Jack's response was immediate. Look, I know you want answers, but that place, something's wrong with it. I couldn't even get close to the entrance without feeling things. What kind of things? Jack hesitated, running a hand through his graying hair. Ever had the feeling you were being watched by something you can't see? A pressure on your chest, like the air is getting thicker, voices whispering in languages you don't understand. Clara nodded slowly. She had felt exactly that for the past 5 years, especially at night. She'd always attributed it to guilt and trauma, but now, I'll go with you, Jack said suddenly. Why? Because there's something I haven't told you yet. He looked around the bar, as if checking to see if anyone was listening. The depths. They weren't just some cult. They were archaeologists, geologists, educated people who believed they had discovered something in the Australian caves, something about the true origins of mankind. That's ridiculous. Is it? Then why did the Australian government officially seal off the Carlsbad Caverns 6 months after your family disappeared? Why are there armed guards patrolling the area 24/7? Clara felt her blood run cold. Guards, military. Officially, it's for national security reasons, but I have contacts, Clara. People who owe me favors, and what I heard is that they found things down there, things that shouldn't exist. Clara's mind was racing. In the 5 years since the disappearance, she had tried to contact the Australian authorities dozens of times, but she always received the same response: ongoing investigation, no new developments. They never mentioned guards or a lockdown. How do you know all this? She asked. Jack smiled, but there was no humor in his expression. Because I used to work for them. Before I became a bounty hunter, I was part of a special military unit that dealt with anomalies, things the public shouldn't know about. Clara stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the wooden floor. You're telling me you work for the government, that this is all some kind of setup? No, no. Jack held up his hands in a gesture of peace. I don't work for them anymore. That's why I became a bounty hunter, because I saw too much, knew too much. And when you know too much about certain things, you either keep quiet or disappear. Clara studied him, trying to determine if he was lying. There was something in his eyes, a sincerity mixed with fear, that made her believe him. Then why are you helping me? Because I have a daughter around your sister's age, and because some things are more important than keeping secrets. Jack also stood up, putting away the tablet. Clara, if you really want to do this, if you want to find out what happened to your father and your sister, then you'll need my help. But you need to understand that you might not like what we find. At that moment, as she looked at the man who might be her only chance to discover the truth, Clara thought of all her followers who had been following her attempts to find David and Emma. For 5 years, she had documented her search on an online channel, sharing every lead, every disappointment, every small hope. Thousands of people around the world sent messages of support, donations to fund her trips, prayers that she would find her family. If you're following this journey with us, please subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell, because everything we discover from now on will be shared with you in real time. Your family has become our family, and together we'll find the truth, no matter where it's hidden. Okay, Clara said finally, but I'm recording everything. The people who supported me deserve to know what really happened. Jack nodded. Just be careful what you share. Some truths are too dangerous to be known. They left the bar together, stepping into the cool desert night. Clara didn't know she was about to discover that some truths weren't just dangerous, they were capable of altering reality itself. The drive to the Carlsbad Caverns took 3 hours, traversing dirt roads that looked like they hadn't been used in years. Jack drove his modified military jeep with the confidence of someone who knew every rock and every curve of this unforgiving terrain. Clara remained silent, gazing out the window at the desolate landscape, illuminated by the headlights. There, Jack pointed to a rocky rise in the distance. The caverns are on the other side of that formation. As they approached, Clara could see the lights, bright points moving like fireflies in the darkness. The guards Jack had mentioned. How are we going to get past them? We're not going to get past them. We're going under. Jack parked the jeep behind a rocky outcrop, concealing it from the patrol's view. There's a secondary entrance, about a kilometer from here. The Deps used it as an escape route. They retrieved equipment from the trunk, flashlights, ropes, a gas detector, and something Clara didn't immediately recognize. What's that? Radiation detector. Jack replied casually, as if it were the most normal thing in the world to bring on a cave expedition. Radiation. One of the theories about the Deps was that they found something radioactive down there, something ancient, very ancient. Clara felt her stomach churn with each new revelation. Jack, what exactly do you think we're going to find? He stopped preparing the equipment and looked at her directly. Honestly, I don't know, but I have a feeling your family discovered something they shouldn't have, and that they paid the price for it. The walk to the secondary entrance was silent and tense. Jack's radiation detector remained quiet, but Clara noticed him checking it constantly. The moon was almost full, providing enough light to avoid using the flashlights and attracting unwanted attention. The entrance was little more than a crack in the rock, partially hidden by dry bushes. Jack had to move several rocks to create enough space for them to pass through. The depths sealed this up after they left, he explained. But not very well. As soon as they entered the cave, Clara was hit by a smell that instantly transported her back to childhood. The damp, mineral scent that always accompanied expeditions with her father. But there was something else, a cloying, sickly sweet odor she couldn't place. Decomposition, Jack said, as if he'd read her thoughts. But not recent. They began to descend the tunnels, following old chalk markings on the walls, the navigation system David always used. Clara recognized her father's handwriting immediately, but there were other markings as well, symbols that weren't part of any mapping system she knew. Jack, Clara whispered, stopping before a series of particularly elaborate symbols. These symbols, I recognize them. From where? Emma's room. In the last few months before they disappeared, she started drawing strange things, symbols like these. When I asked about them, she said they were part of a special project she was doing with Dad. Jack illuminated the symbols with his flashlight. Clara, these symbols are thousands of years old. They're prehistoric. How could your sister know them? The question hung in the air as they continued their descent. The tunnels became wider and more elaborate, with walls clearly worked by human hands. But the further they went, the stranger the formations became. The stones began to show a greenish tinge, and Clara noticed that Jack's radiation detector was emitting occasional clicks. We're going in the right direction, Jack said, checking an ancient map. The main chamber should be about 100 meters ahead. That's when they heard the sound. It was low, almost subsonic, like the rumble of a gigantic engine deep within the earth. But there was something organic to it, as if it were produced by something alive. Clara grabbed Jack's arm. What is that? I don't know, but it wasn't here when I found the chamber. They moved more cautiously, the sound growing louder and more distinct. It wasn't a rumble, it was voices, dozens of voices whispering in unison, creating a harmony that was both beautiful and terrifying. The main chamber opened before them like an underground cathedral. The walls stretched upward, disappearing into the darkness beyond the reach of their flashlights, and in the center, exactly as in the photographs from the camera, was the stone table. But now it wasn't empty. Emma lay on the table, her clothes impossibly preserved after 5 years. Her eyes were closed, and she appeared to be sleeping peacefully. Around her, sitting in a circle, were the members of the depths, all dead for years, yet still sitting in meditation, their faces turned toward Emma, as if they were protecting her. "Oh my God," Clara whispered, running toward the table. "Clara, wait!" Jack yelled behind her, but she was already kneeling beside her sister. Emma was breathing. Clara touched her sister's face, feeling warm skin under her fingers. Emma, it's me, Clara, can you hear me?" Emma's eyes flickered open. For a moment, Clara didn't recognize what she saw in them. It wasn't the bright blue she remembered, but something deeper, older, as if entire oceans were shifting behind those eyes. "Clara," Emma said, her voice carrying echoes of something not entirely human. "I've been waiting for you." "Emma, what happened? Where's Dad?" Emma sat up slowly, her movements too fluid, as if she'd forgotten how a human body should move. Dad understood first. He saw the truth in the stones, in the symbols, in the voices from below, but he couldn't accept it. "Not like I did." "Accept what?" Emma smiled, and Clara saw that her teeth had changed, sharper now, adapted for something beyond a normal human diet. "That we're not the first, that we were never the first. There are others, Clara, older, wiser, and they're waking up." Jack approached cautiously, his radiation detector now emitting a steady beep. "Clara, we need to get out of here. Now." "No," Emma said, her voice echoing through the chamber with an authority that didn't belong to a 16-year-old girl. "You came here for answers. Let me show you the truth." Emma rose from the table and walked to one of the chamber walls. When she touched the stone, symbols began to glow with a greenish light, spreading across the walls like a luminous infection. The images that appeared on the walls told a story Clara didn't want to believe. They showed Earth millions of years ago, but not devoid of intelligent life, ancient creatures, older than the dinosaurs, older than any life form known to science, creatures who built cities deep within the earth and waited. They never left, Emma said, her voice now blended with other voices, creating a disturbing harmony. They just slept, but the signals reached them, the signals from our drilling, our excavations, our noise on the surface, and they started waking up. Clara watched, horrified, as the images showed people like David and Emma being called to the caverns, people with knowledge, with the ability to understand and translate the ancient signs, people who could serve as bridges between worlds. Dad tried to resist when he realized what was really happening. Emma continued, he tried to get me out of here, but it was too late. I'd already heard their voices, already seen the truth, and the truth, Clara, is that humanity is just an experiment that's coming to an end. Where is he? Clara screamed, tears streaming down her face. Where's our father? Emma pointed to the back of the chamber, where shadows seemed to move on their own. He's resting, they're all resting, waiting for the great awakening. Clara ran towards the indicated spot, her flashlight revealing an opening in the floor, a pit that descended into unimaginable depths, and from the bottom, she could hear something ascending. Footsteps. Clara, we have to go, now, Jack yelled, pulling her away from the pit. But Emma was blocking the exit, her body beginning to transform, elongating, adapting to something no longer human. You can't leave, she said, her voice now completely unrecognizable. Not now that you've seen, not now that you know. It was then that Clara made the hardest decision of her life. She looked at her sister, or what her sister had become, and saw that the Emma she knew had truly died 5 years ago. What stood before her was something using Emma's body as a vessel. I'm so sorry, Clara whispered, grabbing one of the torches from the wall. Clara, no, Jack screamed, but she'd already thrown the torch into what appeared to be a reservoir of some kind of flammable gas seeping from the walls. The explosion was deafening. Clara woke up 3 days later, in an Adelaide hospital, with second-degree burns and a severe concussion. Jack was beside her, his arm in a sling, but alive. The caverns collapsed, he explained, when she could focus enough to understand, sealed everything down there, permanently, this time. And Emma, Jack shook his head slowly. No bodies were found, but no exit was found either. Clara closed her eyes, feeling the weight of loss and guilt settling in her chest like a cold stone. She had found her sister only to lose her again, this time by her own hand. There were others, Jack continued, not just in Carlsbad caverns. The government found similar networks all over the world, people disappearing, being called to ancient caverns. But after what happened here, it all stopped. The transmissions, the signals, whatever was waking up down there, you put them back to sleep. Clara remained in the hospital for 2 more weeks, processing not only her physical injuries, but the realization that she had saved the world at the cost of her family. The doctors said she'd suffered hallucinations due to toxic gas exposure in the caverns, and she let them believe it. But at night, when the hospital grew quiet, she could still hear the voices, whispering in the walls, in the pipes, in the spaces between worlds, reminding her that some doors, once opened, can never be completely closed. 5 years later, Clara Morrison still maintains her online channel, but now it has a different purpose. She documents cases similar to her family's, helping others who have lost loved ones to the calls from the depths. And although officially Carlsbad Caverns remain sealed, she knows there are other places, other openings, other opportunities for the ancients to awaken. Some nights, when the wind blows just right, Clara swears she can hear Emma calling her name, not in anger or accusation, but with something that might be forgiveness, or maybe it's just the echo of her own guilt, reverberating through the dark tunnels of her memory. She'll never know for sure, But she keeps listening, and she keeps watching, because someone needs to be ready when the voices start calling again.